She didn't scream as they shoved her toward the frozen ledge. Her boots slipped on the snowpack, knees scraping ice, arms bound behind her back with leather reins that had once tethered her to a life she hadn't chosen. Maeve's breath came in short bursts, not from fear, but from the way the cold wrapped itself around her lungs like a vice. Behind her, her brothers didn't speak. Not the oldest, Jonas, who'd dragged her out of the house by her braid, nor the younger, Cole, who hadn't met her eyes since she told them she was carrying. "This is Indian country now," Jonas muttered, tossing her shawl into the snow like a useless rag. "Let 'em have you." They turned without another word and disappeared into the pines, their horses vanishing like ghosts. The silence that followed wasn't silent at all. The wind howled. Snow crackled beneath her knees. Something shifted beyond the ridge. Maeve let herself fall backward into the snow, her belly cramping from the cold, her lips whispering the name she hadn't yet spoken aloud. Elias. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. But just as the sky bled orange along the ridge, a low growl broke through the storm. One shape emerged first. Gray, massive, eyes burning with light that wasn't human. Then another, and another. Wolves. A full pack. Maeve tensed, heart slamming against her ribs, expecting teeth to end it fast, but they didn't approach like predators. They circled her like sentries. The biggest, the gray one, came closer and dropped something beside her, her shawl. She blinked at it. It was dry, warm, impossible. Her breath shook as the wolf stepped back, sat, and howled once. The call echoed through the trees, into the mountains, into something ancient and listening. Maeve turned her face into the shawl and wept for the first time. That was when she heard it. Slow steps crunching snow, steady, deliberate, human. A tall figure cloaked in fur appeared between the trees, flanked by two of the wolves. His face was hard to see through the falling light, but his voice was low and even. "She's still breathing." The gray wolf stepped aside. Maeve tried to sit up, but her limbs refused. The man knelt, eyes scanning hers, one hand brushing frost from her lashes. "You don't belong here," he said, not unkindly. "But neither do I." She didn't speak. Couldn't. But the wolves stayed. They didn't growl. They didn't leave. And somehow she knew. He had sent them first. Maeve woke to the smell of pine smoke and something rich simmering over it. Her fingers were no longer numb, her arms no longer bound, though they bore raw red marks from the leather. She was covered in fur. Not a blanket, but the thick, bristly hide of a wolf. And she lay on a pile of evergreen boughs inside a small mountain shelter built into the cliffside itself. Wind hissed through cracks in the stone walls, but it couldn't reach her. She sat up slowly and saw them. 4 wolves curled in a half-circle near the entrance, their bodies blocking the wind. One lifted its head when she moved. The gray one. His eyes locked onto hers like he understood every thought. Then she noticed the man. He stood by the fire, stirring a pot, his back broad beneath a stitched coat of hide. His hair was long and tied back, streaked with frost. When he turned, his face was lean, scarred but steady. "Didn't think you'd last the night," he said simply, and ladled broth into a wooden cup. "You're lucky the pack reached you first. I was 2 ridges over." Maeve blinked. Her voice cracked like dry bark. "Who are you?" He handed her the cup and sat across from her, his movements calm, grounded. "Name's Calder. I trap through the upper passes. Don't keep company with most folks." His gaze didn't linger on her bruises or the tear at her dress, but she knew he saw everything. "They left me to die," she whispered. Calder didn't ask who they were, just looked toward the gray wolf. They wouldn't let that happen. She drank the broth slowly, hands trembling. Why'd they help me? Calder leaned back against the stone, eyes reflecting the firelight like amber. Because I asked them to. Maeve frowned. You trained wolves? Not trained, he said. Trusted. As if summoned, the gray wolf rose and padded over, lying down beside Maeve's legs. She tensed, but Calder only nodded. That one's Bram. He decides who lives. Maeve stared at the creature beside her. Bram closed his eyes. Not in sleep, but in peace. I've got nowhere to go, she said, voice barely audible. Calder didn't speak for a moment. Then this is where you'll stay, until your feet work. Or your heart does. The fire popped. The wolves settled. And for the first time since she was dragged from her father's porch, Maeve felt something like safety. Raw and strange, but real. By midday, Maeve could stand, though barely. Calder said nothing when she tried to help gather firewood and stumbled twice. He simply handed her a longer stick for balance and pointed toward the slope where dry pine limbs gathered naturally under the rocks. The wolves followed her. Bram in front, the others flanking behind like sentries. It should have terrified her. But it didn't. There was something reverent in their silence, and how they never let her lag too far or wander too wide. Calder watched from above, arms crossed, always near but never hovering. When she dropped to her knees near a stump and put her face in her hands, one of the younger wolves pressed its nose to her shoulder. No words, no questions. Just presence. That evening, as Calder cooked a root stew, Maeve finally asked, "Why are you really out here?" "You live like you're hiding." He stirred quietly, then said, "Maybe I am. Maybe the world out there doesn't want me, or maybe I stopped wanting it first." She opened her mouth, then shut it. She understood. The night was colder than the last. Calder added pine tar to the fire and set extra stones to heat before laying them beneath their bedding. When Maeve curled beside the fire, she found a piece of tanned leather folded neatly at her side, meant to replace the torn hem of her dress. She looked toward Calder, but he'd already turned in, his body silhouetted by the flickering flames. The wolves lay around him like a second skin. That night, Maeve dreamt of falling. But when she awoke, something felt wrong. Calder was gone. The wolves were alert. Bram paced near the entrance, nose to the wind. Maeve rose, wrapped in the fur hide, and stepped outside. Snow had started again. Only light flurries, but enough to mark the ground. She scanned the trail. Calder's boots had gone east. But there was another set of prints. Small, bare, human. They had come from the ridge, circled the shelter, and stopped just behind the firewood stack. Her breath caught. She knelt. The snow was too fresh. Whatever it was, whoever, it had been there while they slept. Bram growled low in his throat. Calder returned minutes later, a dead rabbit in hand. She didn't speak, only pointed. His jaw tightened. "Those ain't mine," he muttered, "and they ain't yours." Maeve stood frozen, heart pounding. "Then whose?" Calder stared into the trees. "We'll find out by morning, or they'll come back first." And in the firelight, the wolves sat up in perfect silence, watching the dark. Maeve didn't sleep again that night. Neither did the wolves. They formed a ring around the shelter, quiet and still, eyes fixed outward, as if sensing a threat no human could name. Calder kept a rifle across his lap, but didn't touch it. He seemed to be waiting for something, though Maeve didn't know what. When dawn broke, Calder didn't speak. He simply nodded towards the trees, and Bram took off like he'd been unchained. 2 other wolves followed, weaving through snowdrifts with uncanny silence. Maeve waited by the door, heart tight. "They'll lead us to it?" she asked. Calder nodded. "If it left scent, they'll find it." They followed slowly, Calder in front, Maeve trailing with the last two wolves who refused to leave her side. The tracks from the night before had partially filled with snow, but there was no mistaking their shape. Bare feet, small, staggered, as if someone had limped around their camp, silently watching. Maeve shivered. "Could it be a child?" Calder didn't answer, not at first. Then, softly, he said, "Not one from around here." They followed the trail until the prints vanished under a fallen pine. The wolves circled, noses twitching, then darted north, away from the ridge, toward the deeper cliffs. Calder's face changed when he saw where they were going. He stopped walking. "There's nothing out there," he said. "Just ice and wind. No one survives there." Maeve didn't move. "But the wolves are going." Calder looked at her, as if debating. Then he swore under his breath and started after them. The ground dipped, then curved hard toward a frozen ledge where wind had swept the snow clear. Bram stood there, silent, his paw pressed to a smooth slab of ice near the base of a stone wall. It looked like nothing, just rock and wind-polished snow. But then Maeve saw it. A crack, barely an inch wide, and beside it, something red. She knelt. Blood. Dried, smeared into the rock. Calder crouched next to her. "Someone crawled in," he muttered, tracing the crack with gloved fingers. "Or got dragged." He stood abruptly and began clearing snow with his boots, exposing the full entrance, narrow, but not impassable. "Stay here." "I'm not staying here," Maeve said. Her voice surprised even her. Calder studied her for a moment, then gave a single nod. Together they entered, Bram close behind. Inside, the air changed. It was warmer. Still. The wolves halted ahead, ears flat, and there, in the dim light filtering through cracks above, lay something wrapped in cloth, so still it might have been dead. But then it moved. A breath. A sound. Maeve gasped. "That's a baby." And Calder whispered, "No, not just a baby. That's what the tracks were guarding." The space was no more than a hollow in the cliff wall, barely tall enough to crawl into. Cold seeped through the stone, but the wolves had padded the space with leaves and fur. Some dragged from old kills, some torn from their own coats. In the center lay the infant, wrapped in a thick, tattered quilt that looked far too old to have made it here on its own. Maeve reached forward instinctively, but Calder held her back. "Let her come to you," he said softly, eyes locked on the smallest wolf pup curled beside the child's legs. It bared its teeth with a pitiful growl, then whimpered and nudged the baby closer to Maeve's hands. Calder watched, jaw tight. "That pup hasn't left her once. She's theirs." Maeve's throat ached as she knelt down, slowly easing the child into her arms. She was impossibly light, maybe 6 months old, skin feverish and pale, lips chapped, but her eyes fluttered open at the movement. Deep blue, still alive, still seeing. "She's been fed," Maeve whispered. Someone fed her." Calder didn't respond right away. He was examining the stone shelf behind them, where a small metal tin had been wedged into the rock. It was half filled with goat's milk, frozen at the edges. Next to it, the charred stub of a burned-out candle. "She didn't get here alone," he said, "and whoever brought her here meant to come back." Maeve held the child tighter. "Then where are they now?" The silence that followed was long and heavy. Finally, Calder stood. "We bring her back. She can't stay here another night." But as they turned, Bram blocked the entrance, ears flat. He growled low, not at them, but at something beyond the narrow opening. Calder crouched low. Go. Now. Maeve didn't argue. She gripped the child tight and backed out the tunnel just as the wind shifted. And then she heard it. A crunch in the snow. Not wolf, not bear. Something with boots. Calder emerged a moment later, rifle raised, expression hard. The wolves had formed a wall around Maeve as she shielded the child. Calder's voice was calm, but deadly. If you've come for her, you'd better think twice. A shadow moved behind the trees, tall and ragged. But then, it turned. Fled. Bram didn't chase. He stayed. So did the others. Calder lowered the rifle, scanning the tree line. They were watching us, all night. Maeve didn't look away from the baby. She's not just a secret, she said softly. She's a message. Calder nodded slowly, eyes still on the horizon. Then we'd better listen close. Whatever brought her here isn't finished yet. The cabin looked smaller now. Or maybe it was that Maeve saw it differently. Its cracked beams, its scorched hearth, the places where loneliness had grown like mold. But she carried the baby through the door as if it were a temple. Bram entered first, gave the all-clear, then settled near the hearth. The pup that had guarded the infant climbed onto Maeve's lap the moment she sat. Calder started a fire, hands moving with focused urgency. Maeve unwrapped the child slowly, revealing more bruises, old ones, along her ribs. Her voice trembled. Who could do this to her? Calder didn't answer. Instead, he unrolled a map from beneath a floorboard and laid it on the table. Maeve watched from across the room. What are you looking for? Answers, he said. And maybe a name. He pointed to a ridgeline on the edge of the range. Old trapping routes run through here, abandoned for years, but there are signs someone's been living wild. Tracks, smoke site. They're not Lakota, not settlers. Mountain men? Maybe, or maybe just one. Maeve rocked the baby gently, who'd begun to stir. Her lips moved, not crying, just sound, as if testing her voice. Calder turned. That child's not here by accident. You saw the wolves. They didn't just protect her, they delivered her. Maeve looked down, heart pounding. To us. No, he said softly. To you. Before Maeve could respond, the baby's fingers curled into her collar, and the sound she made wasn't a whimper. It was a word. Mama. Maeve's breath caught. Calder froze. For a moment, nothing moved. Not the wolves, not the wind, not even the fire. Did you hear that? Maeve whispered. Calder nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. She knows you. But how? Because you were meant to find her. Maeve looked at him, then really looked, for the first time without fear, without suspicion. Calder's eyes were fixed on her, not with hunger or pity, but with reverence. I've been waiting, he said. It was so soft she almost didn't hear it. For what? She asked. His voice cracked. For something to believe in again. A knock shattered the moment. Not a fist. A single deliberate tap. The wolves were instantly upright. Maeve stood slowly, the baby pressed to her chest. Calder took the door, opened it. No one. Only snow. And then, something dropped from the porch railing. A carving. A wooden wolf, its teeth bared, its eyes burned black with soot. Calder lifted it slowly. Behind them, Bram began to growl, not at the object, but at the woods beyond. Maeve whispered, They're not finished. Calder nodded, his grip tightening. Number. But neither are we. They found the mark while changing the baby's wrappings. It was faint, but unmistakable. An ashen smear shaped like a crescent, just below the arch of her right foot. Maeve touched it gently, thinking it dirt, but the skin didn't clean. Calder leaned in, his face darkening. "That's not a birthmark," he murmured. "It's ritual." Maeve blinked. "What kind of ritual puts ash on a child?" "Not the kind you come back from." His jaw worked slowly, gears grinding in his head. "Years ago, the trappers whispered about a ridge cult. Mountain men who'd gone too long without people, too long in the caves. They didn't bury their dead. They marked their children with ash, said it bound their spirits to the earth." Maeve shivered, clutching the baby tighter. "Then why let her live?" Calder's voice dropped. "What if they didn't? What if she wasn't supposed to survive?" Maeve looked toward the wolves. The pup had curled beside the child again, and Bram sat like a sentry at the door. "Then why protect her?" Calder stood. "Because something went wrong in their plan, and right in ours." He began pulling old journals from beneath floorboards, old maps, a hand-carved bone knife. "This isn't just some abandoned infant, it's a rescue, and we're the middle of it." As the wind picked up outside, Maeve swaddled the baby tighter. The wolves grew tense. Then, another knock, faster, urgent. Calder flung the door open, rifle in hand, but found only snow swirling, until Maeve gasped. "Look!" In the center of the porch, a circle had been drawn in soot. At the middle, a scrap of cloth, torn, bloody. Calder stepped forward and lifted it. Not just cloth, a veil, woven with wedding lace. Maeve's voice cracked. "This is a warning." "No," Calder said, jaw set. "It's an invitation." Maeve looked at him, startled. "To what?" "To come get her." Bram growled low, and the pup barked once, sharp and scared. Calder turned back to the baby. "They know she's still alive, and they're calling us out." Maeve touched the mark on the child's foot again, then looked to Calder. "We can't leave her unguarded." "We won't." Calder's eyes were burning. "We'll find out where this started, and we'll finish it." Maeve nodded slowly, something shifting in her chest. Not fear. Resolve. "Then we'll follow the ridge," she said. Calder looked toward the map again, then out at the rising snow. "And if we're not back by dawn," Maeve didn't blink. "We'll be back." The wolves moved toward the door before they did, as if they'd heard the same unspoken oath. The wind howled louder the higher they climbed. Calder moved ahead, rifle slung across his back, snow up to his knees. Maeve followed close behind, baby wrapped tight across her chest, one hand resting on Bram's thick fur for balance. The pup darted in quick, anxious loops, whining softly as if tracking something they couldn't see. They followed the ridge until the trees thinned and the cliff's edge reappeared, where Maeve had once nearly died. It was Calder who stopped first, lifting a hand. "There," he said quietly. Below the bluff, half buried in drifts and branches, lay a ring of stones blackened with old fire. At the center, bones. Not animal. Human. Maeve's breath caught. "They burned someone here." Calder nodded grimly. "Not recently, but it's not what I expected." He stepped closer, brushing away snow until he uncovered something strange. Small carvings. Wolves, women, children. Dozens of them. All faceless. "This is a shrine," Maeve whispered. Calder's face was pale. "Or a graveyard." Bram growled suddenly, head turned toward a thicket beyond the stones. The pup ran ahead, barking. Maeve followed on instinct, pushing through the frozen brush, until her boot hit something solid. Wood. A shallow box, half dug, half frozen. She knelt and brushed snow away. "Calder," she called, voice thin. "Help me." He arrived quickly, pried open the box, and inside was another child-sized shawl, embroidered with the same wolf sigil carved into the stones. But no body, just ash. And beneath the ash, a necklace, a carved tooth on a cord. Calder's voice was brittle. This belonged to someone high in their pack, a chieftain of their madness. Maeve stared at it, her mind piecing together what the wolves had shown her all along. They buried this. They buried him, the one who led them. Calder looked down at the necklace, then back at the baby strapped to Maeve's chest. And now they've chosen someone else. Maeve blinked. Me? No, Calder said slowly. Her. As if on cue, the pup let out a howl, not frightened this time, but full, round, deep. Calder turned back to the ridge. They're not warning us anymore. They're guiding us. Maeve stood slowly, snow sticking to her skirts. Then where to next? Calder pointed down the ravine. There's a cave system 2 miles that way. If there's anyone left, any of them still watching, they'll be there. Maeve looked down at the baby, who stirred in her sling and opened her eyes. Clear, wide, impossibly aware. She's not afraid, Maeve whispered. Calder met her eyes. Then we shouldn't be either. The wolves moved forward without hesitation, breaking trail toward the mouth of the mountain. It didn't feel like a cave. It felt like the mountain exhaled. Cold air rushed outward as they stood at the entrance, their torches barely piercing the darkness. Calder stepped in first, rifle raised. Maeve followed, clutching the baby close to her chest, the pup and Bram flanking them on either side like sentries. The stone walls were slick with old moisture, and strange symbols had been etched just below head height. Marks that matched the ones Maeve had seen on the child's shawl, now wrapped tight around her. These aren't just drawings, Calder muttered. They're instructions, a creed. The wolves hesitated at a fork in the stone. Bram growled low, nose twitching, then padded left. Maeve followed without question. It took them deeper, so deep the air thinned and the silence pressed against their ears. Then the howl came. Not from the wolves, from inside. Human but twisted, wounded. Maeve froze. Calder raised the torch higher and stepped into the next chamber, and what they saw made both of them stop breathing. A circle of rocks. 5 figures cloaked in black furs, kneeling around an extinguished fire. Not moving, not even flinching. One of them held a knife, its blade buried in his own chest, long since frozen over. Another had her arms folded across a bundle. Now bones. Maeve gripped Calder's arm. They're dead. Calder nodded. But not long ago. They came here to die. Together. Ritual? She asked. Redemption, he said. Or silence. At the far end of the chamber, something glinted. A wooden cradle, empty save for one object. A child's bracelet made from sinew and beads, with the ash mark carved into the clasp. Maeve picked it up slowly. She was theirs, she whispered, and they let her go. Calder stepped beside her. No, they gave her up. For a chance she'd be raised without all this. Maeve looked at the dead around them, the wolves who had led them here, and the child in her arms. Then why the warnings? The veil on the porch? The blood in the snow? Calder's voice was quiet. Because they weren't all ready to let go. Maeve's chest ached. But now? The wolves stood at the edge of the chamber, their heads low but no longer tense. The baby blinked, then reached a tiny hand toward the torchlight. The flames didn't flicker. Maeve's voice steadied. Now it's over. Calder nodded. And she's ours. They turned back through the cave, the silence following them like a final breath. As they emerged into snowlight again, the wolves moved with a calm grace, no longer guarding, but escorting. Behind them, the mountain seemed to seal itself in silence. Ahead, the wind carried no threats, only cold, only truth. By the time they reached the cabin again, The snow had stopped. The world lay quiet beneath a silver sky, every tree outlined in soft frost, every footprint they'd made on the way out already erased. Maeve stepped onto the porch first, her arms aching but full. The baby hadn't made a sound since they left the cave. Not a cry, not a coo, only that wide, steady gaze, as if she'd seen the same deaths, the same blood, and had already decided to live differently. Calder paused at the edge of the clearing, watching the tree line, where the wolves stood once more in silent formation. But this time, they did not growl. They did not pace. They bowed their heads one by one, and then turned away, into the forest, into legend. The pup lingered, whining softly. Bram nudged it with his snout, and finally, it followed the others. Maeve whispered, "Will they come back?" Calder stepped beside her. "Not unless they're needed. Wolves don't waste themselves on the past." Maeve swallowed hard. "Neither should we." Inside, the fire still smoldered. Calder added fresh wood, and the flames caught quickly. He began repairing the broken window, hammering new planks where glass had shattered weeks before. Maeve rocked the child gently, studying her face in the glow. "We need to name her," she said softly. Calder didn't pause. "Era." Maeve looked over. "Snow? She survived it, and she'll never fear it again." Maeve nodded. "Era, then." As if in response, the baby yawned and closed her eyes. Maeve pressed her lips to the girl's forehead. "You're safe now." They worked in silence, together. No more blood, no more veils, no more digging in frozen dirt. That night, Maeve woke before dawn and stepped outside. The moon sat low and full above the trees. No sound stirred. But as she stood there, she saw something strange at the edge of the clearing. An object stuck into the ground. She walked toward it barefoot, breath visible. It was the carved tooth necklace, the one Calder had left in the cave. Now hung on a stick, planted like a marker. Below it, tracks, not human. Wolf. Dozens of them, all around the cabin, none crossing the threshold. Maeve stood still, then slowly bent and whispered, "Thank you." Behind her, Calder's voice came quiet. "What are they saying?" Maeve turned to him, heart steady. "That she belongs here, and we do too." Please like, share, and subscribe to support more true-hearted stories on Echoes of the West. If wolves had come for her at the edge of that cliff, would you have turned them away or followed them too? Tell us in the comments.